Welcome back to Superhost Down Under. Before we dive into today's episode, we want to give a shout out to the tool that makes this show possible, Riverside. As you know, Sylvia and I are in different cities and our guests are all over Australia, but Riverside ensures we capture crystal clear audio and video by recording locally on each device. It's an all-in-one content engine allowing us to record, edit, and even publish our episodes. The AI tools are game changers for saving time. The core feature is text-based editing, which allows us to cut video and audio by simply editing the transcript, turning complex post-production into a simple text fix. Beyond that, tools like the automatic cleanup feature instantly remove silences, filler words like and ah, ensuring the final product sounds broadcast ready. Plus magic clips and show notes, AI make repurposing and promotion effortless. If you want to create professional quality content without needing a physical studio, try Riverside for free using our link in the show notes, plus use code RAY15 at checkout for 15% off any paid plan. Okay, welcome to Superhost Down Under. This week we have Geoff on the show. Welcome to the show, Geoff.
Thanks, Ray. Looking forward to it.
Welcome, Geoff.
Hey, Sylvia.
And before we jump into your interesting story, we're going to talk about our weekly topic. Sylvia, what do we have for this week?
Well, believe it or not, I've got another true story from a host friend of mine. So this particular one, what happened, and it's a very recent one, so it's still fresh in my mind. So she didn't have a booking for one of her properties for one particular night. She got a late or short notice booking, and there were no reviews. So she had to make a decision. No reviews, short notice. Should I take it? Shouldn't I? She took it. She decided to take it. And as the property has a lockbox, she didn't have to meet with the guest. She didn't see the guest. And everything ran smoothly, the check-in, until about 12:30, just after midnight. She awakens to a call from Airbnb support, messages from her guest, a flurry of messages. And what's happened is the guest has said that she's locked herself out. Fortunately, the property wasn't too far away from where she lived. And she went downstairs, got in a cab, went across to the property. When she got there, she found two people, and they both appeared intoxicated. That made her lose a lot of confidence. But she let them into the building, and then once she was at the actual apartment within the building, she found that they had left the keys on the outside of the apartment, in the lock, but on the outside so that anyone could walk past and go into the apartment. So the security of the apartment had been compromised. So they hadn't locked themselves out as such. They had left the keys on the outside of the apartment and went out. This was very disturbing for her. She wasn't sure what to do. She asked them, could they simply make sure that they left the property in a good state? So she just didn't feel she had any choices, or to say that they couldn't stay for the night. So the following morning was checkout, because it was only a one night, and they seemed to check out fine. She goes there, and the place is a mess. And there's blood stains on the sheets. There's drug paraphernalia. It was everything she didn't want, and it hardly seemed worth the one night stay. So she cleaned everything up, put in a claim with Airbnb. Well, actually, the claim goes to the guest first. And then if the guest refuses to pay, then it goes to air cover. So she asked for the refund on the money paid for the cab fare there and back. She asked for extra cleaning money. And look, this is a question that you often bring up, Ray. Do you accept people on short notice? You know, especially without reviews. Airbnb was very interested in this case when my friend did speak to them about it. I don't know if they take this sort of guest off the platform because they're certainly not the kind of guests that, you know, a host would want. And then, you know, it made me think a lot about a lockout policy. I don't have a lockout policy in my house rules, but it made me think that maybe that is important. In fact, you know, maybe most important is a lockout policy if it's after hours. If it's during hours, it can be managed. The other question, of course, is, you know, why was the guest locked out? For example, if they're checking in, fair enough, they can't be locked out. But if they've lost the keys, at whose cost is it? And that's when I think there should be a clear lockout policy in your house rules. But this is all up for discussion. Ray, Geoff, what are your thoughts?
You go ahead first, Geoff.
It's happening more and more, isn't it? Yeah, interestingly, I do. Yeah, I mean, I probably see this sort of comment coming through from the Airbnb leaders at least once or twice a week. And
I've mentioned this to Sylvia before that I'm not a fan of last minute guests. It's a way of, like, it's like a sign of how prepared someone is. Things can often happen that are out of their control. But my experience from the several years, not 18, is that usually, irrespective of the cause of why they're booking, the guest is in a heightened level of stress because they're trying to find something to check in the last minute. And so I'm stressed because I need to make sure that it's clean and everything's ready. They're stressed because they're asking to check in the next 30 minutes, in the next hour. They're like on the street or whatever. And so it's not good for the both of us to be stressed and then that impacting my review or their stay or anything. So I think the morning rule is a really good one. And then you can always make exceptions to the inquiry. And yeah, that's a really good one. I think I sit somewhere in between that everyone is good and you should be paranoid that everyone might have a chance of hurting you. I'm probably on the path of everyone is good until you see some amber red flags. Yeah, I think yeah.
Well, the other thing I've noticed over the years, and I think I'm reasonably lucky because my properties are in regional Victoria. It is fair to say reports from hosts in the major metro areas, Brisbane, Sydney, and Melbourne, have a harder time with, let's call them, disruptive guests.
Yeah, no one's coming to the country for a weekend party.
No, exactly right. I mean, people go to the country to get away from all of that sort of stuff. So by and large, they're actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Would any of them, though, Geoff, be having, big parties at all?
Totally.
Because it's a house or?
Yeah. Look, I've had one of my properties sits on 4 acres. I've openly had guests say, "Hey, we want to have a party for Grandma's 70th birthday." I've actually said, "Yeah. I mean, how bad can a party for Grandma's 70th birthday actually be?" Well, it can be fairly bad when you've got 32,
lots of hips
family members there. Yeah. But it's the same.
Grandchildren.
Exactly. You got and that's where 4 acres it goes really well because the kids all go running out, running down around the paddocks, and everybody's happy. The larger the house, the more prone you are to parties. Obviously, I certainly have hosts in
Exactly.
my area that have 10 rooms. They can sleep up to 20 people, and that just gives me cold shivers. And the prospect of 20 people staying in my property at one time, even though the house can sleep it, doesn't leave you with much comfort. I mean, that no matter how you look at it, that's a party every single weekend, whether they're having a party or not.
Yes. Yes. A lot of garbage too.
And this all started 18 years ago on Stayz. And what got you into starting 18 years ago and then eventually adding Airbnb to your mix?
Okay, well, it's a bit of a sad story. I had my two oldest children were very young. They were 5 and 6 at the time. And my wife and I had decided that we wanted them to realise that the world of Brighton, where we live here in Melbourne, is not reality. It's not indicative of how the real world works. I mean, normal people do not drive to the local Woolworths in their Maseratis and their Porsches to pick up the milk. Okay, but in Brighton they do. So we set about looking for a place in the country to buy, and we stumbled across this rundown stone building made out of bluestone. Loved it. Set about renovating it just for ourselves, and it took 6 months to get the house into a habitable state. During the 6 months in those days, I was working for an investment bank known as Lehman Brothers that spectacularly sent the world into global recession. Yep. And I got up one morning and I didn't have a job.
What was your role at Lehman?
I was Associate Director, Corporate Finance, in charge of creating the very product that
structured products.
Yeah, structured products.
I worked in structured products at one of the big 4 banks in Australia.
Oh, did you? I did CDOs.
During 2007, yeah.
Yeah. So I did. I created CDOs, or as they're better known as cross-collateralized debt obligations.
Yeah.
And, so no job, mortgage to pay, house under construction.
Two children.
You kind of got to finish the house. There is no option other than to stop. You cannot stop building, right? So you've got to keep going. But then the house had to earn money. And the easiest way to do that was, because we decided to settle on the area of Dalesford. It's a high tourism area. Let's do weekend rental. And the idea was to do, a couple of times a month, enough to pay, the rates and the land tax and the mortgage, and the rest would be fine. But that changed. And the business grew. Like a number of hosts, I started off using a local property manager. I became despondent with them fairly quickly. I thought I could do this job myself better.
Yeah, I know this feeling.
And I do. I think I do it better than them. And so I took it over. And if I had known on day one, when I had my first actual guest in, what I was getting myself into, I would never have done it. Hosting is one of those jobs you want to go into totally blind, naive, and ignorant of the realities of the world. And I certainly did that. And guest number one turned up. He was a muso, a guy, Ross Wilson, from the band Mondo Rock. He and his family came, and I realised as they checked in, I thought, I thought, you have no idea what you're doing. Yep, that's right. We're just going to have to wing it, play it by ear, and see how we go. And I've never gone back. I've never thought about going back to a property manager. Several years later, I bought the 4 acres that surrounded the first property. I spent another 6 months stripping and renovating that house, creating a very different product to the first house. The first house caters for family, for groups of friends. The second house was totally aimed at the singles market, couples, grey nomads. The grey nomads are the best because it's normally the wife has had enough of the portaloo and not having a hairdryer. She just wants a decent toilet and a decent shower and a decent place to sit at night, So it's been good. And that was Airbnb. If you go back in time, Airbnb didn't exist when I started to host, certainly not in Australia. In fact, the day I opened my door, Airbnb was just beginning to be formed in the minds of Brian Chesky and Joe Gebber, in San Francisco. And so I started off with what was probably the preeminent platform here in Australia, Stayz. And Stayz worked well. I went from zero to hero on Stayz in such a very quick period of time. And life with Stayz was good until Stayz got bought by Home and Away. And then it started to drop. And then Stayz got bought by VBRO and it dropped again. And, I have a master's in business that I did from Harvard. And the one thing you learn very early on is that you've got two types of business operations. One's called a branded house. That's where everything you buy is branded the one name. And that's what both Home and Away and VBRO have done to Stayz. The other one is called a house of brands, and that's what Airbnb has. And the market would be very surprised to know what other businesses exist out there that they may use that are actually owned by Airbnb that are not branded Airbnb. And that's because when somebody has a strong position in the market with their own brand, why change it? And that's what we see VBRO doing at the moment, right? They've gone back to, in Australia, they've gone back to using the Stayz name. And in New Zealand, they've gone back to using Bookerbatch. Two names that resonated very strongly with the domestic populations in their own countries. But I think the damage has already been done. It's too late. It's too little too late for them. And
Did Stayz ever offer the shared home?
no,
When you're on Stayz, yeah. So Airbnb was the first to introduce the shared home,
yeah,
wasn't it?
Airbnb, yeah. And Airbnb had to do the shared home. The laws in San Francisco does not permit doing what I do. And what a lot of hosts in Australia do, and that's where we create a whole house specifically for the purpose of holiday rental. So an Airbnb,
Right.
the predominant in San Francisco anyway, the predominant product is a room. We call it a room stay, but it's a room stay in a shared house. Yeah, where you can be sharing with the owner, or sometimes you may well just be sharing with other strangers.
So mine is a shared home with me, the owner.
Yeah. Do you enjoy it? Met
I
anybody
love it.
interesting?
I didn't know. Yes, I mean, I started 11 years ago. No one had heard of Airbnb in Australia then, and I didn't even know how I would react to having guests in my home. But I found I loved it. I loved meeting new people. I loved obviously I loved the income too, but I loved making sure people felt at home, that they were comfortable. I loved telling them about my city, where to go, what to do. I love all of that.
Oh my God, you
So,
could be one of our
and
community leaders.
for the shared homes anyway.
Look, I totally agree with you, Sylvia, and it's really interesting because I think what you're delving into is why successful hosts are actually successful. And in one of my many hats I wear for Airbnb, I have a role called ambassador. And ambassador is a particular function where you're engaged by Airbnb, you're paid for the role to help new hosts on board. And you know literally within about the first 10 minutes whether a host is going to be good or bad. If the first question is, and I get it quite a lot, how much money am I going to make? You're in the wrong business, because the money we make, as you know yourself, goes up and down like the weather. So I wish it wasn't, but there are good times and there are lean times, and you've got to be able to ride out the lean time. And a good host knows how to do that by managing the properties well and by managing their expenses well.
Yeah.
But
I was reading about
The pandemic was a lean time. Sorry,
not for
Ray.
me. No, well, this is where it
Oh,
was interesting. If you were outside of
The
Metro
Ring of Steel.
Melbourne, yeah,
Hmm.
for me
of
personally,
course.
the
Yes,
pandemic
yes,
was
For
my most profitable years in the last 10 years.
yes, yes, that
What
makes sense.
Yeah, because what we discovered was there were new markets. Anybody who lived outside of
Mm.
the steel, I mean, I would never have thought who would live in regional Australia and want to go on holidays in regional Australia. Well, apparently, a lot of people.
many
You know,
people.
it was incredible mainly because they could,
Mm,
whereas the rest of us couldn't.
mm,
So it was that opened my eyes a little bit to not always assuming that your market is the most obvious, or in my case,
mm,
that my market is always going to be an hour and a half away southwest from where my properties are. Sorry,
mm,
southeast from where my properties are.
mm. I think something to
Mm.
keep in mind during these turbulent times with the war is like I have friends who are quite nervous
Mm.
about international guests, and I'm like, sure, but that's also it's a cascading effect. So people who would have flown overseas, maybe they'll do some domestic traveling, maybe they'll do some driving. It
Yeah,
just We're not just dependent on one market of international. At least for me, like I live in Melbourne, and my properties in Melbourne. Like there are people who travel from regional Victoria or like regional Australia to come to Melbourne, and they don't have to fly because they can drive and they're not driving a diesel car, and they
Hmm.
might have an EV, and it's much cheaper than trying to fly overseas. So I think something to keep in mind, your point around like different
Oh, 100%. And so I've been, this last week, I've been sitting in on a number of research presentations. Tourism Australia, another group out of the UK called Key Data,
Mhm,
and we've been looking at traveller trends. And there is a thought, and Ray, you've hit on it, that our domestic population will start to travel locally again, as opposed to going overseas.
yeah.
Particularly when you see what the airline tickets are going to. I probably have just come out of the busiest Easter school holiday period I've had in years,
Mhm.
and that seems to be recorded across the board for most hosts.
Yeah, I'm surprised my bookings have not dropped.
Yeah,
But at the same time, I discussed in an earlier episode is that I'm also just piloting multi-channel with direct booking and like VRBO and Booking.com. So there's a lot of factors at play right now. One
yeah,
of the things I was reading about about your listing is your Bluegums Retreat, where you stay with the guests and you act as a local guide. Tell
I do.
about how that
Yeah.
got started.
Um,
That's
it was a bit.
great.
It was a bit of a challenge that was put out to us. Um, Brian Chesky came out one day and he laid down a challenge that he wanted as many of the community leaders around the world, and there's just over 1,000 of me, to try room stay, either as a guest themselves or as a host. And so I tried it. I had no shortage of people booking to stay. I curated, I suppose, I looked around my little town and I curated, I didn't want a guest who just wanted to come and stay in their room the whole time and not talk to me. If that's what I wanted, I've got a teenage son. I can have that every day of the week, right? Um, so I wanted somebody to actually get to know the region. And so I created this little, I suppose, itinerary of things that we would do. Most of it is free in my area. Um, and it's been a lot of fun. The majority of my guests that do room stay are single males under the age of 35. I have had the whole time only one female come to stay,
Yeah.
and I suppose that doesn't surprise me.
Mhm.
I mean, to be real, does a single female really want to book a room stay with somebody who appears to be a middle-aged male? And the answer, yeah, well, the answer is no. So I kind of had always thought that my typical guest would be single males, or it would be a couple of guys who are out travelling around together, and that's what it's turned
The
out to
single
be.
females are coming to mine.
Yeah, and can I say, in my ambassador role, that happens so often. In fact, Airbnb makes it so easy because single female hosts are the only group that are allowed to openly discriminate against, within Airbnb, to discriminate
Oh,
against the guests that they take in. And there is certain wording that as a single female, we encourage you to put into your website. Like, you're allowed to use the words women only, right? And that
I did not know
signifies,
that.
oh, there you go. So
I've
if you
seen
are,
that on the Gold Coast, women
yeah,
only.
yeah, women only, and that stops. Firstly, if a male tries to book, you're entitled to cancel and say no without any repercussions or penalty whatsoever. If the male then complains to customer service will look at your profile and go, "Nah, that was all fair. Go away. You can't book there. She clearly says women only." Because there are some creepy guys who do try to book stays with single females, and it's just not pleasant for the hosts. I can't imagine what it must be like for a host to feel
Uncomfortable
unsafe.
in your own space.
Yeah, in their own home. Yeah. Yeah.
Also read that.
Do you know I accept males?
Yeah.
I accept males. I've never had a problem.
No,
In fact, I've actually I've said to a lot of my friends who are hosts that I find that the single male behaves even better because they're so afraid of stepping out of line, and they are neater, they are clean. And another thing about them, though, is they are out the entire time. They sleep about 6 hours. Sometimes they seem to forget to shower. And whereas the
totally.
females are in the shower a lot.
Yeah. I had a call from a host I was assisting, a lovely lady, and she said to me, "Geoff, I need you to do something for me. I need you to talk to my guest." He was a young French boy from Paris who was staying with her for 3 weeks. He was about 22 years old. I said, "Okay, what's the problem?" She said, "Can you come round for coffee and just talk to him?" She lived quite near me, and I said, "Sure." So I said to him, "What's the problem?" He said, "Firstly, he doesn't shower, and secondly, he spends his entire time walking around the house in his underwear." And I said,
"Is that
"Right."
uncomfortable for her hosts?"
I said, "That's lovely." Yeah. She said, I said, "So you want me to tell him to put clothes on?" She said, "Oh no, I'm happy with him to walk around the house in his underwear. He's quite good looking, but it would be really nice if he would just have a shower because he smells."
Oh,
Must have been like that model I had once. He was gorgeous to look at. Yes, not so good on the nose.
No.
I think, Sylvia, for like you know, we're good friends and we talk about how important it is and things we learn over time of setting clear boundaries. I think in the younger years,
Exactly.
the earlier years, and for more impressionable young women, it can be uncomfortable to like
Fair
have.
enough. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think like with time gives wisdom to set those clear boundaries, and like I think it's for me even a work in progress to be really clear with boundaries with people. And so I think Airbnb did a great job with letting female single women guests who are having men book that if they're not comfortable, then they should be allowed to cancel without detriment to their rating, because like it affects your
100%.
postings. So
Yeah.
Sylvia, you're comfortable with it, which is great. But if you weren't comfortable, it would be so uncomfortable to know that you have to choose between having someone you don't want in your home feel comfortable to like losing your rating or affecting the rating for too many
Yes.
so I think that's a very good mechanism, I think, for
Totally. And
Very good.
there are a lot
Yes.
of there are a lot of women. I went through a period where I was assisting for Airbnb quite a few women who were domestic violence victims.
Yeah.
Who had really, really strong reasons of just not wanting another man in their property.
Past trauma.
Yeah, and I don't know why I would actually get them to assist. Somewhere along the line, they just felt comfortable with me, and they feel comfortable telling me about their problems and you know their ex-partners and what can they do to stop this. And it's some of the stories are very, very sad.
For sure. I've also hosted guests of women who left their partners in dysfunctional relationships, and they were just hopping from one Airbnb to another. And
Yeah.
actually, that was a very last minute booking because of another Airbnb that fell through, or like she didn't feel comfortable staying there, so she on the same day wanted to check into another Airbnb, and it's very difficult, especially when children are involved too, and you're like having to sort out custody. You're trying to keep a job, but also you have no stable home, and those proceedings take a long time. So very, very challenging times. Sounds like you've dealt with a large range of different guests, yet still been able to maintain a 5-star rating, which I haven't been able to, nor Sylvia. So,
But
yes.
Ray, I don't have a solid full 5-star, because I think my overall rating is only, what is it, 4.99. So clearly there was someone who gave me less than 5 at one stage.
So Airbnb just couldn't have you make others feel bad about their time. But tell us some of the things that you think helped you maintain such a high rating over this long tenure.
I think the very first thing is to treat every guest with respect. I think that's important. They're not a walking, talking ATM machine to fund our lifestyle, and they don't frankly deserve to be treated like that. I often make the comment when I'm presenting to groups that we live in a time, particularly over the last 5-6 years, where we need to acknowledge that for almost every single guest that's staying in our properties, this is a big expense item for them. They've made the decision to spend their money to stay with us. So, we're not doing them the favour. They are actually doing us the favour. And all too often, I read in these various chat groups, or I listen to hosts go on about how the guests should be so lucky that the host has allowed them to come and stay. Well, really? I mean, is that what you really think? Because there's a lot of choice out there. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is how you deal with. I always say it's easy to be a good host when everything is going right. But anyone who's done this for more than 6 months knows that everything often doesn't go right. And I think the true mantra of a good host is, how do you deal with things when everything is going wrong, when the guests can't get into the house, when they can't get the Wi-Fi to work, when the best one I tell is, at 6 a.m. in the morning, I'm getting a text because the guest wants a coffee, and all of a sudden the Nespresso machine has decided at that very moment that's the day it wants to be descaled. And it's not going to work until it gets descaled, So I see a lot of hosts that just brush things off. And, sure, you can't make a coffee on the Nespresso machine. Okay, it's not World War III. You could actually walk for 10 minutes around the corner and get it from the local cafe. But you know what? They don't want to do that because it's a cold, rainy Sunday morning. And so you need to have this mindset that says, firstly, you need to start off with that most people in the world are rational and reasonable. Therefore, if they complain to you about something, it's not because they're just wanting to be a pain in the ass. It's because for them, it's a real issue. And if it's an issue for them, it needs to be an issue for me as the host, because ultimately the buck stops here. Only tonight I was dealing with a host writing to me about how it was so unfair that a guest cancelled a booking because they arrived at the house and the cleaner hadn't cleaned it. It wasn't her fault, it was the cleaner's fault. And I said, no, it wasn't the cleaner's fault. The cleaner doesn't own the house, you do. It's your fault. It's your responsibility to deliver what you've promised to deliver to the person paying for it. How this started off is a little bit harder to explain. I did not set out on day one thinking I would ever be on the advisory board of Airbnb, or even that I would be a community leader for Airbnb. I set out when I decided to host to create a product and to treat my guests the way I wanted to be treated and the type of house I wanted to stay in when I travelled with my family. That was my whole reference point. Would I think this was good enough for me? And if the answer is no, it would not be good enough for me, then it's natural, it's not good enough for me to deliver that to a guest. And I think that's how people really need to change your mindset. You need to have a guest mindset as a host, always thinking about, would you accept this yourself? And most of us would say no. I go to Queensland, height of summer, 32 degrees, Ray, we're in Melbourne. Okay, air conditioning's not working. No, I'm sorry, that's not good enough for me. I'm dying in 32 degrees because I think 25 degrees is a hot day.
It's a very funny story you say that. I used to live in Gold Coast and I invited Sylvia to my home, and she told me, I'm not sure what you're talking about with the 20s is beautiful. I love it when it's like that in Sydney. Until she felt Queensland 20s with the humidity.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's just bad.
It wasn't so
I said
beautiful
to Ray,
anymore.
yeah, I said to Ray, why does it feel so hot? It's only like 28 degrees. And
Yeah.
it was
28 degrees.
an
Oh my God, I've had the
experience.
aircon cranked down to 19.
Yeah. Yeah. She didn't cater for the humidity factor that it might be
Yeah,
27, but feels like 35 when you're
totally.
just dripping.
So advice I'd give to hosts, right, is that if a guest rings and complains about something, don't avoid them. Don't put the blame on
Answer and
somebody
be
else.
honest.
Be honest, take it on the chin and just say to them,
Try to fix
okay,
it.
I can sort that out for you. I can't sort it out in the next half an hour, but I can certainly get onto it and sort it out today. And follow up, get onto it. In my case, I
Good
drove
advice.
1.5 hours on a cold, wet Sunday morning to descale the coffee machine.
Oh my
And,
gosh.
and, and as I was around the corner, I rang the guest and said, hey, I'm actually just around the corner. Can I bring you a coffee? And she said, oh, yes, could we have 3 cappuccinos, 2 lattes and stuff like that? No problem. I also picked up a bag of locally made ginger cookies,
Oh,
took them
yeah.
round, gave them their coffees and their cookies, and they all
Oh,
sat there. And I said, this is going to take about 20 minutes. They said, no, that's no problem. You just do it. We'll just sit here while you're doing it. And I did the descaling and I cleaned the machine for them. And they said thank you, and I headed home. And I got 5 stars.
And are you
And I got
sure
a comment that said,
beautiful.
Geoff is fantastic. The coffee machine wouldn't work, and he drove all the way from Melbourne to get it to work for us. That's worth more to me than the, $400 they were paying me for the night to stay there.
Are you sure you don't want to go back to corporate life, making illiquid assets for people?
Never. I do not miss it one iota. I thought I would, and look, for a little while I did, right? Because you go from something like that, Ray, to hosting, and you kind of think I'm really demeaning what I do for a living. But no, I do not ever want to go back. I look at my friends who still do it, and they look suicidal and they have grey hair. Some of them have no hair. I have all my hair.
You have good genes.
Yeah,
Yes, and you look healthy.
that's true.
I think your design principles, things I fully agree with from my time in designing digital products, but also it carries over to when you do your Airbnb. I think Sylvia and I talk about it a lot, is like staying in your own property. Also, designing a space that you would enjoy staying in, because if you don't enjoy staying in it, like, why would you put someone else through it and expect them to love it if you don't even like it? And so I think it's very, very good advice to treat people like you want to be treated, which is honesty and like being responsive and trying to help people out. On the fixing things, I try to give my guests the option of I can come fix it. It'll take me some time to get there, and by me I mean my co-host, or gives them the option of fixing it themselves and like crediting them, like, oh, the coffee machine's not working, but like I can give you a voucher or like some credits to go buy coffee if you want, or we'll come fix the machine. Like, what do you want? Like, either way.
Oh, look,
So yeah.
yeah, totally, and I certainly have done that. I had a situation, 3-4 weeks ago. The guest rang me and said, "Your upstairs bathroom is leaking into the laundry." It's something no host ever wants to hear. And I said, "But hang on, it's okay, because that's only the ensuite bathroom, and we had a second bathroom." The guest said, "We'll just use the other bathroom." Right?
Yeah.
So I bought the guest 2 entry passes to the local Hepburn bathhouse, the historic bathhouse. They went for the afternoon. It cost $70. I mean, they were there for a week. Okay, so this was a $1,500 booking. $1,500 booking. I can afford to go and spend $70 buying someone 2 passes to the local spa, and that's the other thing to think about that too, is that if you're going to do something for your guest, do it with reference to acknowledging how much you're actually earning from them.
Yeah.
Sure. Because I think that goes a long way. And again, they were ecstatic. For me, I was able to get in the day they checked out with my plumber. And it was a very easy fix, as it turned out. Who would have thought that after 18 years, the grout around the edge of the shower would just disintegrate? It just literally needed to be resealed, right? This is a 35-minute job to fix the problem. But I wouldn't have known about it, because that's not something you normally check between guests when you're doing a changeover.
No, yeah.
So,
exactly. That's very good advice. And in your latest property, or the one where you're staying in the property, you also take them out for dinner? Is that right?
I do. Yeah, we have. There's a couple of different places we go to, because I've got a couple of favourite restaurants. They're all what I would call mid-range. One is called Reuben's. It's been there since the 1970s. It's only changed hands once. The other one is a bit more upmarket. It's called the Farmer's Arms. It's basically upmarket pub food.
Yeah.
But they love it. And what I find is, I've yet to have a guest that takes advantage of it. In fact, most of the time when I go out with them, particularly if I'm taking out guys, the guys offer to pay for the drinks, or they offer to split the bill, or it's quite good.
Well, I'd happily let you take me out for dinner. I'm going to book an accommodation at your stay just so you take me out for dinner, and then get me a coffee and some baked gingerbread.
That's right. Because the coffee machine's not working.
It's a great way to meet people.
It is, and I've met some really, really funny people over the years. I've had. Can I tell a bit of an adults only type story?
Sure.
Oh, well.
Yes.
We're not
please
rated
do.
for children, so.
I had a young couple come and stay, and the guy comes running downstairs and he says, "Do you have any condoms?" I'm going, "No." He says,
So just share them.
"Well, where can I get them from?" I'm going, "Mate, it's Dalesford, Sunday night, 8 p.m. We're in middle of regional Victoria. There's not a lot open." He goes, "Well, she's not going to have sex with me unless I wear a condom." And by this stage, I'm thinking, you really know this girl well, don't you? You did not know this before you arrived at my house? Not even going there, right? Okay.
Maybe they had no more left.
Then he says, "Well, what am I going to do?" And I'm thinking, "Mate, I'm your host. I'm not your father. Really, come on." And he says, "Oh, just have to go and work something out." Okay, bye.
I wonder if you can order on Uber delivery.
No, well, see, we don't have Uber in Dalesford or Hepburn Springs.
What? Really?
No.
Uber doesn't exist. Yeah,
No way.
no, it's really good.
Yeah, a lot of the regional areas, it doesn't exist.
So on
During
Christmas,
We're spoilt, Ray.
during the
on
pandemic.
yeah. Well, on New Year's Eve, after a big barbecue with
Yeah.
my friends, we just craved coffee, and I was house sitting at a place that didn't have a coffee machine, and we actually Uber eated three espressos, or like cappuccinos. They came 35 minutes later, spilled everywhere, and it was
Cold.
probably like the most expensive, low quality coffee we've ever had. But
Oh
you know,
my
when you
God.
just have a craving, you just will pay a premium for it. But yeah, we
He
Ubered
probably got them from the local
from the
BP.
petrol station.
Yeah, out of the machine. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to know how they solved the problem, so please don't share.
we won't get it.
I don't want to know. Don't need to know.
Jeff probably doesn't know either.
Well,
Oh no,
I'm not gonna ask
it's
him.
an old house. I can hear how they solved the problem.
They found an alternative solution. Jeff, thank you so much for your time coming on the show and sharing your story and the stories of others.
That's all right. It's been my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we will include your properties on our show notes so guests can stay. And I wish you the very best.
Oh, thank you very much. I got to say, I've been loving, as I've been clocking on, watching some of your previous podcasts. They're really